guys, this is Richie here, back again from the Red Planet Films, bringing you yet another movie review, and this time it is going to be for Resident Evil, The Final Chapter, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and starring Mia Jovovich, returning as the star of the film Alice. I think it's without question that I am a pretty big fan of these films, actually. I have the first one on DVD, and I have the atrocity of the second one on Blu-ray. I have the Cornfest that is Extinction. I have the decent but midway through boring Afterlife on Steelbook. And then I have the other atrocity, Retribution, on Blu-ray. I enjoy the films. I love Mia Jovovich. She is absolutely beautiful. She's a what seems to be very nice person, I'm sure. And she is Alice. She's just completely awesome. She kicks a lot of booty. Going into this film, was I excited? Yeah. The first trailer I saw, I was interested. I was invested. I liked how it was cut together. I liked, Paradise City as sort of like the backdrop of the trailer. And they have to go back to Raccoon City in this film. I wasn't really getting my hopes up too high because, the films aren't really known for their quality and plot or any of that stuff. It's just a good popcorn flick. They've got good action, more or less. So, I was like, screw it. Yeah, I'll go see this one. It's the first one I'm going to be seeing in theaters. So I was, that's what I was pretty much looking forward to. And I was looking forward to seeing how they would tie up the whole franchise, being that it's the final chapter. And I'll get into that in a little bit. By the way, this will be a spoiler-filled review. I won't go full in depth like I've done in previous reviews, and then this drags on for however many minutes. Right in the beginning of the film, it kind of introduces you to pretty much what's happened in the previous installments of the film. So for someone who isn't familiar with these movies, you might get a bit of a knowledge as to what happened beforehand. So I actually went with my good friend Jesus, who happens to have a YouTube channel. I will leave the link in the description box down below. So he's never seen the previous films, so I would assume that it might have filled in a couple of the gaps, that little opening monologue. And it went into a little bit more in-depth of how the T-virus came about, and there was a doctor by the name of James Marcus, and his daughter had some sort of condition where she was aging rapidly, and by the time she was, or would be 25, she'd look like a 90-year-old woman. So he was conducting all these experiments and everything, and he found this thing called the T-virus or whatever. And, it worked. Everything went well, but there was just something about it that just wasn't right. In comes Dr. Isaacs, who we know from, I believe, Resident Evil Apocalypse. And he pretty much wanted to exploit this virus. He wanted to make it something much more grandiose, if you will. So he pretty much, him along with Wesker, they set up the murder or fake death of Dr. James Marcus, so then that way his daughter, Alicia, who was the girl who had this weird condition, would be the new appointed owner of said company, and then she would be under the care of Dr. Isaacs and all that stuff. So, he was just worming his way on into the company, and then that's when the events of the first Resident Evil take place, where the T-virus just goes completely, everywhere, and then so on and so forth, and then it just escalated from there. So after that opening monologue, I thought to myself, I wonder if this is supposed to be Alice. I don't know, because it was Alicia, Alice, I was like, you know what, it'd be a little bit too corny if they did that. So then it shows where Retribution left off, which was in Washington, D.C., so pretty much looks super run down, pretty much what Trump is going to make it into. And then, of course, we are introduced to our heroine, Alice. And, of course, she's mulling about by herself yet again. And that's the only gripe that I have with these films. She always ends up by herself. And there's no explanation as to how the people that she was with in the previous film just disappear. I think the only one that kind of explored that was Extinction, and it was still very brief. It was like, oh, you know what, we decided to go over here when you're like, nah, I don't want to go with you guys, And the movie progresses, and then she meets up with the Red Queen yet again, and it was told that young Alicia was modeled after, or the Red Queen rather, was modeled after Dr. James Marcus's daughter, which was Alicia, the girl with the aging condition. So that kind of, there was a lot of answers, or questions rather, that were answered from the previous films that we didn't really know. Like, where did this come from? Where did that come from? And it gets like pretty much answered for you, like within the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of the film. So the Red Queen pretty much gives Alice instructions that she has to go back to Raccoon City because there is a cure for the virus. It's an airborne cure, and then if she releases it, the whole like zombie horde infection thing will, just completely dissipate. So then she comes to realization that, oh, I'm infected, so if I let this go, I'll die. Then the Red Queen is like, yeah, but I mean, you gotta do it for mankind, you gotta save everybody, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Of course, shenanigans ensue, and she's being monitored by Umbrella, by Wesker, who makes a return, by Dr. Isaacs. She gets captured, blah, blah, blah. She escapes, and then she meets up with Claire Redfield, played by Ali Larter, and then a couple other random people. You got some guy named Doc, another guy named Razor, another girl named Abigail, who's played by Ruby Rose. I think she's from Orange is the New Black. And then you got a couple other people, some random douchebag named Christian, who's all like, oh no, why is she here, bro? Like, one of those kind of just dudes that's like, oh, I don't trust her. And then it's like, 5 minutes later, it's like, yeah, I trust you now. I knew I should have trusted you. Dr. Isaacs was heading on over to Raccoon City because he knows that she's been told by somebody from the inside about the cure for the T-virus. So they have to pretty much go back down to the hive, and then they have a battle with Dr. Isaacs and a couple other zombies. Alice and her new, old, I guess, crew lose a couple of people, and then they go deep into the hive, and then they lose a couple more people. But before that, the Red Queen, when they get into the hive, reveals to Alice that there might be somebody on the inside that's working with Dr. Isaacs and Wesker with her and the group. And then you find out later that it is the character of Doc, who was with Claire Redfield and her crew this whole time. He was kind of like on the inside or whatever. Getting back to what I made mention of earlier, my thought about young Alicia. So my friend next to me, Jesus, he mentioned something along the lines of, oh, is that the real Alice? When they showed Alice on screen. And I was like, yeah? And then he says to me, oh, is that her daughter? And I was like, when? I didn't follow what he was saying. So he pretty much got what was happening before it was revealed. I was a little bit confused, but at the same time, I kind of, I guess, thought about it, but I just didn't think that that was going to be the direction that they went. And that is the exact direction that they decided to go to. So there is a scene where it shows Umbrella talking about how in the book of Genesis, the Earth was pretty much wiped out and it was rebooted. So Dr. Isaacs had the suggestion of, why don't we reboot the Earth ourselves before it ends in 50, 100 some odd years. So then that way we can reduce famine, this, that, and the other, and then it could be under our regime, under our control, the way we want it to be. Umbrella's like, that's a fantastic freaking idea, let's do it. At the end of this table was an older woman, and she sounded like Mia Jovovich's character Alice, but just kind of like old and grizzled almost. And I was like, that kind of sounds like her. That I was saying to myself, but I was like, it's not her. Because then there was like a kind of a zoomed out shot, and they showed her, and I'm like, it doesn't look like her, but it was from afar. In comes this wheelchair bound woman, an older woman that was in that scene in the meeting with the table and the other Umbrella Corps people, and sure enough, it was an older version of Alice. So the Alice that we've been following for these 5, 6 odd movies was indeed a clone. The artificial intelligence of the Red Queen was molded after young Alicia, the likeness of young Alicia. So I don't think young Alicia was really cured, if I'm kind of putting the pieces all together well. So she ended up aging super freaking quickly. So this older Alice is young Alicia, and then this Alice that we've known for these couple of movies is the clone of young old Alicia. Does that even make sense? So it was like this kind of like M. Night Shyamalan-esque twist that it's like, oh, this is this and that's that and this is that, and then you're like, oh my god, my brain, it's exploded. But at the same time, this is kind of cheesy, because this is something that literally somebody putting together like a fan film or just like a small, short, little independent film would think of, you know? Not to detract from anybody's, you know, intelligence or creative writing and stuff like that, but it was just like, moving along plot-wise, that's pretty much the end of everything. I'm sure you can imagine how the movie actually ends. She does, in fact, Alice gets the T-virus cure and just releases it, and then it's revealed that yes, the zombies do die and everything, and then she collapses, and then there's a huge cop-out of an ending where she wakes up and Claire's there. She's like, oh, hey, Alice, you did it. And Alice is saying to herself, oh, how am I still alive? And then the Red Queen comes up out of nowhere, and she's like, you're still alive because there was more good cells than there were bad cells of the infected cells. So the infected cells were wiped out, but your good cells remained, so you were still alive. We lied to you because we needed to see if you were worthy enough to actually go through with this act. Blah, blah, blah. So congrats, yay, you're alive. Oh, the cure, by the way, is going to take a couple of years to touch down everywhere all over the earth. So you still have work to do, and we're going to end the movie with, you know, kind of like a little thing that if we want to just go back to this franchise and revisit it, we can do so. So I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years or something like that they release another movie called Resident Evil: The New Chapter, because it's possible, because this is the final chapter of this saga. Moving along from that, though, the editing in this film was very choppy. It was very all over the place. There were a lot of scenes where you couldn't really tell what was going on, or they were kind of trying to, the impression that I got, they were trying to go for like this Mad Max Fury Road route where just a whole bunch of action was going on, then they're cutting to here and they're cutting to there, but it was just like somebody's in the editing room floor just going like this with the film tape, and it's just like, I'm gonna cut here and here, paste this together, and it was just a mishmash of different angles and stuff just all at once, and it just it wasn't cohesive. And the film was also very dark too, so there were a couple of moments where you couldn't even really see what was happening. It was just silhouettes running in the dark, and then just flash muzzles from like the gun and everything like that. So that was like the only time you can see something. And then there were a couple of monsters that looked cool on the big screen, primarily the one that's in the trailer of this big ginormous bat. And then there's one in particular that I don't even think has been in the games at all. This movie, it was, I wanted more, and I shouldn't have expected more. I wasn't really expecting much. All I was really excited for was the fact to finally see one of these films in the theater, and just to see what unanswered questions that we were going to have answered and how they're going to wrap it up. And it just wraps up with a cop-out because they want to keep it open just in case they want to revisit the franchise, which is quite obvious. And, you know, it was okay. All in all, I hate to say, I'm going to have to give this movie just a solid D. Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed my review. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this film. Where do you rank it amongst the other 5 Resident Evil films? Let me know if you enjoyed it, if you agree with any of my opinions and all that. Just anything you want to let me know. Just sound off in the comment section down below. Please make sure to check the description box. You will see the link to our gaming channel, the Red Planet Gaming. We are 393 subscribers strong. We also have a walkthrough. I'm doing a walkthrough personally of Resident Evil 7. So if you guys are interested in watching that, feel free to head on over to that channel. And you'll also find our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram info down below as well. And I did make mention of my good friend Jesus over at ZEUSIZLOOSE. That's his gaming channel. We collab all the time. We'll stream Uncharted and a couple other different games. And he's the one who lent me this so we can get the crisp, beautiful audio and everything like that. So check out his channel, subscribe. I think I'm in the mood to watch either Resident Evil or even Afterlife. There was that one scene that they replicated from Resident Evil 5 with the Wesker, Chris, and I think Alice and Claire. You know what scene I'm talking about if you've seen this movie. And then this one is just really, I feel like this is a very underrated film. Yeah, that's Resident Evil, the final chapter for you guys. Expect a new chapter in a couple of years, or some type of reboot, I'm sure. That's pretty much it. Thank you all for tuning in.